Our speaker tonight needs little by way of introduction. She's an internationally recognized political analyst whose commentary crops up in multiple media outlets, including television, CNN, PBS, NBC, LBC, print, the International Herald Tribune, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and online in places like the Huffington Post. She's based here in New York and serves as the senior diplomatic correspondent for Al Hayat here in New York. I first heard her speak when she gave a keynote address to a room of over 200 alumni and guests several years ago at a dinner that we held in Montreal. There was no rattling of silverware or clinking of glasses while she spoke. Attention was focused on her every word. As further testament to her powerful talents, I share with you this one little anecdote. When one of our AUB alumni received the invitation to tonight's lecture, he wrote, "I deeply regret my inability to join you on this valuable occasion. Dr. Dergham is a distinguished scholar and one of the most accomplished persons in the media. She is one of the most eloquent and respected Arab voices in championing freedom and human rights. My family and I compliment you on this choice. I think you will agree with our alumnus. This was a wonderful choice. Please welcome our speaker."
I so appreciate this invitation by both of you, AUB and LAU, and Lina, and together with Eva. And because I so appreciate the fact that you would gather to hear my story and my views. To me, that is precious. There was this woman whose daughter, they live in Holland, I believe, but her daughter joined ISIS, Daesh. And there's that woman, heartbroken as she clearly was. All she wanted to do is to say, "I love you all the time, come back, I'll take you." She said, to use some of her words, like the sea takes life back even if it's been dirty. The water, it's been dirty. And she said something about, she said, that mothers give their children the ticket to heaven. And she says, "Your ticket is with me." This is the sort of thing that I believe is so touching about our lives. It's not only about statements. It's not only about positions we take or ideologies we take up. And I honestly feel the privilege of being trusted by my audience, whether it's television or those who read me, so that I witness what I see and they trust my not credibility, they trust my real humanity through it. They trust that I am not going to mislead them. Even if they're wrong, I'm going to just differ. Even if I'm wrong, I'm going to just say, I am going to tell you how I feel, and that's why, if you prove me wrong, I will then look into it and I'll change the course I've adopted. So, let me take you first. I want to take the journey, the personal journey, if you permit me, because I'm asked to speak about, as an Arab American. Technically speaking, I'm a third generation Arab American, technically speaking, because my grandmother and my grandfather actually met here in the United States. My grandmother had left Lebanon with her husband, not my grandfather. She was in Texas. She got divorced. Then they told her, well, you know what? There is one community that you should go to, and that is in Messina, New York, in upstate New York, next to Malone, a small little village. So my grandmother, off she went, and went to Messina, and met my grandfather, who, of course, fell madly in love with her because she was stunningly beautiful. And I remember her, she used to say to me, when I was young, your grandfather used to be on his knee, and I would put my foot on his knee, and he would tie my shoes. So this is the sort of, I think this is the experience I imagine my grandmother in Messina, New York, with little boots, and my grandfather doing that in the United States, not in Beirut, of course, because it couldn't have happened then. So then, my grandparents had umpteen number of children. 8 grew to become adults. 5 of the 8 were born in the United States. 4 girls and a boy. And it seems that Jiddu Ibrahim must have turned to Teta Yazda and said to her, Yazda, we have 4 girls now. Take them back home because we need to marry them back home. So off she goes to Lebanon, to Beirut, and Jiddu will come back and forth to Beirut. And of course, every time he went, there was another child. One of them was my father. So this is then how, technically speaking, I would be a 3rd generation American. Of course, I came to study here. And when I first came to study, it's because Uncle Naif, who was the only guy who sort of stayed all the time here, he married with 4 children, etc., big family. So half the family, they are called Durhams, because he, this is, I checked the other day about Social Security, and it turned out I'm a Durham. I'm not a Dergham, so I better make sure that I change that so that I could collect. But, so there's the Durhams who have never spoken a word of Arabic, who have never been to Lebanon. These are my first cousins. And the Derghams, who then came, I was first to come here. My uncle just thought, because I was published at age 15 in Beirut, and he came for a visit. I was published in Al-Hasna, which was a very prominent paper, a magazine at that time. So he thought, oh, I was precocious, and come to the States. And so he decided that come to New York. So of course, I was so excited to come to New York. But I couldn't understand why my uncle Naif was flying me to Montreal. And I'm going to New York. As it turned out, of course, Uncle Naif lived in a town called Plattsburgh, which is close to Messina, all the way close to Montreal. And it turned out I was not coming at all to New York. I was going to Plattsburgh, upstate New York. So I left the city that I'm very cosmopolitan. I love cities, as I discovered later on. I left and I ended up where? In Plattsburgh. And of course, listen to this. Uncle said, well, apply to the university there, State University of New York. And so I applied, and they accepted me and gave me scholarships. And my parents said, if you stay in the States, it's only where Uncle lived. Therefore, I ended up in Plattsburgh, and I went there for doing my university studies. Then, of course, I moved on to Boston. I can't be making small stops because there's too much to tell, and I want to then speak a bit about the geopolitics. I guess some people are expecting that. But when I went to Boston, I did this program, and I called it Haneen. It's called Nostalgia, meaning nostalgia for those who don't know Arabic. And this program was a radio program. It was a community program. What I did is that I was actually waiting tables, waiting to see about being accepted at Boston University for my master's. I got accepted, but I never went, but that's another story. So then a man who was with his first name, I remember David, and he was some senior CEO or something with Kentucky Fried Chicken. And he said to me, what are you doing next? And I said, well, I'm waiting to see if I'm going to get for my master's, etc. What did you study? I studied journalism and creative writing, and I was published, and etc. Why don't you do a radio program here? How do I go about it? He says, here's how you go about it. You go to the community, and you engage the community, and they buy advertising from you, and you go to buy airtime with WUNR, I remember. So you do that, and then you have your radio program. Then it becomes a community program. Make it bilingual. And that's exactly what happened. It was the best learning experience I had. Because really, that's why one of the main reasons I did not continue to have my master's, because I thought, next, I need to really get on with some other stage in my life. It was an amazing learning experience, and it was amazingly interesting because that was happening during the civil war in Lebanon. So we are now 75, and then of course that's when my parents, back to a little bit to my parents, we decided that we will bring them to the US, and then my uncle and I processed their papers, and my mother, may her soul rest in peace, my father and my 5 siblings ended up coming here to the States. So then this is the sort of part of what you wanted to talk about, the migration. How did that happen? So then I sort of fulfilled my experience in Boston. I learned a lot as a broadcaster. I did documentaries. I spun these records at that time. I made mistakes. I remember one time I made a terrible mistake, and I woke up like I realized it about like 12 at night. And I called Father Lahoud. I said, Father, please, you have to come with me to at that time, it was not the studio in the city. You had to go to, because at that time, it was about to be broadcast. So it was very far away. And so he drove me there in order to correct this one mistake. And we knocked the door of this one engineer. What do you want? I said, I'm coming to edit something, a mistake I made. So I remember this sort of thing when Father Lahoud took me there, because I said, I can't make a mistake and let it stand. I need to fix it. After that, and there's a lot of experiences that are very good experiences in Boston. Then I came to New York with the idea at the beginning that I was supposed to be joining the United Nations radio section. Then there was this man whom I hated then, but now I said, may his soul rest in peace, because I came to take the job actually. Then he decided that I neither had the right voice for radio, nor was my English or Arabic good enough. So he decided that no, he was not going to give me the job. And that's when I was forced to take up journalism and become a foreign correspondent. So that's why I'm saying thanks to his judgment that I ended up where I am. I want to go quite fast from here on, because as a foreign correspondent based at the United Nations, I had a fantastic opportunity to learn tremendously, to grow as someone who has had good luck to be mentored by many people. Many people held my hand and showed me the right way. And then I dared. That's the one thing that I was to my strength all the time. I dared ask questions, I dared push the envelope, I dared hold their feet to the fire, and I think that's exactly what a journalist should do. And from that time on, from the age 23 till now, I have always dared, and I've always thought that it's my job to hold their feet to the fire. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job. That it's my job to think out of the box when I'm writing my column. That's my job not to just take the first answer and say, yes, yes. That the follow-up question is exactly where you nail it. And even if it is one time I did an interview with the foreign minister, and I asked one question only 11 times. That was the whole interview. Because we needed to get the answer. And then it ended. I had the opportunity to use the United Nations, to use it positively as a springboard to cover international affairs. So I was not stuck only writing about the UN story. You'd throw me in the Philippines, I would end up interviewing Ferdinand Marcos, the president who was impossible to reach at age 26. You would throw me anywhere in the world, you would have me covering the non-aligned conference in Cuba when Castro and Tito were fighting for, who's going to be the leader of that. And then there was the revolution in Iran. There was, it was an amazing year, 79. I mean, there was so many things to do. And I just would always put my foot in the door and just not take no for an answer, and really work to get the story and get the scoop, and to ask the right questions and the daring questions once I got the interview. Consequently, I was known to be, I was more known at that time as an interviewer than I am now as a columnist. Now I am more, people just say, I wait for you on Friday, because they wait for the column, the geopolitical column that I write. And that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted not to be recognized only as, this is the journalist who did great interviews. I wanted to, again, push the envelope and say to my editors, who made sure that it was not an easy thing to do, that yes, a woman, yes, can think and can deliver material on a political, geopolitical level. And and you cannot put it in the garbage, because that piece that you're going to read, you can't afford as an editor to put it in the garbage. So I've been tested and proved when it came to reporting, to interviewing, and I just really wanted to be a political columnist. There was resistance in the beginning, quite a lot of it. But then, it became, I'm proud to say that I am one of the few women who are considered to be respected, at least, I don't want to say more, political analysts on television and in print. And I say that in a way, I'm proud to say that, but I say it with sadness. Because I shouldn't be one of few women. There should be a lot of women doing that. And the trouble is that a lot of women so far, because they broke into journalism and they thought it's a good idea to be a good reporter. Nothing is bad with that. Nothing is wrong with that. Nothing is bad about it. Good interviewer, excellent, no problem. But to analyze, to have an opinion, that's too much daring. I hope this changes because it's important in order to make a difference. You have to dare to differ. And you have to dare to ask the questions. And when I was honored by Murex Dor in Lebanon, I said, when I accepted it, I said, I give this to every girl who is aspiring to stand where I'm standing. And I said, don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid. You have to always dare. I have been through difficult times, very difficult times. At one point, there were letter bombs 15 minutes away from the mailbox I have at the United Nations. And the only thing I could think about, in the beginning, I held my ground. I was very, I was trying to be, to operate with in a level-headed manner. I did what I needed to do. And then, I think the next day, something like a little later, I broke down, and I know when exactly I broke down. When I imagined my child, who was probably 8 years old, 6 years old, I think, at that time. When I imagined her, they would tell her that your mother died, and then she couldn't look at the corpse to ascertain my death, and she would have had to live all her life thinking of this thought of a mother dying, and then she is blown to pieces. And she couldn't get the chance to say goodbye. And that's when I broke down. And that's when I thought, oh my God, this is, I say chapeau to those women who still go to the field. I have lost several of my friends. Mary Colvin, I will tell you, is one of them, the one who died recently, who was killed, of course, in Hama. And I say chapeau to them that they went to the difficult places and faced death and said, I'll do it because that's part of my job. I, of course, also received definite threats, no doubt about it. Many of you are from Lebanon, and you would remember there was this era of assassinations of many of my friends. One of them, I would mention at least Samir Qasir, at least, and Gibran Twaini, of course, and Maishid Yaq, who was targeted. And I know it was clear, I was told in so many ways, stay away because you're next. And so I was also, there was an attempt to intimidate me in other ways. There was an attempt to intimidate me by telling me, basically stop reporting what you report from here, the United Nations, because what I was reporting is what I saw objectively as a journalist, where there was a certain general in Lebanon spinning the story and telling the press, write it as I say. And then the conflict was in the morning when the paper was published, and I was confronting him every single day. I had no idea, because he was giving his the spin, he was dictating, and I was doing my story, and so I had to be silenced, because I was, in Arabic we say, I was proving him a liar every day, without even meeting him. Well, when there was one thing to do about it, basically to confiscate my passport, as I was traveling with the Secretary General of the United Nations, with Kofi Annan. And he only let me know that when I was leaving. And because when you travel with the Secretary General, normally passports, you don't hold them. They are with security attachment. So Glenn was his name, and he said, they took your passport, but they have not given it back to me yet. And I said, would you tell me what happens? Anyway, during the trip, he says, I'm asking for it. At the airport, I'm saying, is it with you? And he said, not yet, not yet. I'm thinking, what's going on here? Now, I have my American passport, but, I didn't. So then I remember I'm going up the plane, and he goes like this, I have it. I said, okay, great. So we're going, where were we going? we were going to Damascus. And so we are received at the VIP room and etc. And, Farouk Shara at that time was the foreign minister. He'd been a great admirer of my work, because I was always with Syria in its negotiations with the Israelis. I always stood with Syria in these negotiations. There was no doubt about it. Because at that time, the negotiations were really hot, and we thought they were that far away from reaching an agreement. Anyway, long story short, let's go. We go to the Hilton, is it? The Sheraton, I think. Those who go to Damascus would remember, it's one of them only. I get there, and there is Glenn. Where are you? Where is your passport? And where's your American passport? I said, I have it. What's going on? I don't need a visa with my Lebanese passport. I don't need it to enter Syria. He says, yeah, had it not been annulled. And so here I was in Syria with an annulled passport. Okay, so let's just not go into that a little more. I just will say, basically, the person who did that meant to harm me big time. And at any rate, thereafter, even when they told the Kofi Annan that, Mr. Dergham can come back to take the passport, and I just didn't even pay attention because I had my American passport and I was really pissed off. But then, apparently, that same person decided that, in fact, he had delivered to my colleagues in my newspaper an indictment, and my clever colleagues in the newspaper decided, oh, we'll fix it, let's not tell her. And an indictment would have had me, had I been going to a wedding or to a funeral, would have had me in the women's prison, rotting till now. But my colleagues, my male colleagues, were very clever, they thought, and they didn't tell me. By accident, I realized it here in New York. And I, of course, realized that that person went as far as to accuse me of dealing with the enemy. And he put the case where? In the military court. That's it. I mean, that's it. I said, in Arabic, I'm going to say this in Arabic, أنا راغدة درغام لن أمثل أمام محكمة تتهمني بالتعامل مع العدو. I would never stand in front of a court that accuses me, Raghida Dergham, of dealing with the enemy. I will never honor that, because anyone who knows me, anyone who knows my work, and there is one wonderful lady over there, Majida, who knows me for 30 years and knows how much I've fought for the things I believed in, including the justice of the Palestinian issue. And I said, I will not give you the satisfaction of standing. Anyway, long story short, ended by me refusing to appear there. We're trying to make deals that what have you. And finally, a precedent happened, quite honestly, a very good precedent. That person who brought it to the military court had to drop it. And that's a victory for freedom of the press. That's a victory for standing up to your rights, a victory for me as a woman as well. I'm sure you want to speak about Lebanon, but let me start with other places. We all have gone through many difficulties, almost being on a seesaw since the Arab Spring, or the so-called Arab Spring, or the Arab disaster, or the Arab correction, or the Arab, whatever you want to call it. Because, really, at one point, I was against it in the beginning. I said, what's going on? Why is this happening? All of a sudden, what is going on? And then when I saw that there's excitement in the squares and the young people bringing a change, I said, I was wrong. I really need to celebrate this change and this intent by the young people in particular to get a hold of their lives. So I switched a little bit. Then, of course, so I bet many of you had been on the seesaw. One day thinking, I should think that way, another day that way. In the final analysis, it's not a zero-sum game. Where we are right now, I think Tunisia is not doing too badly. The women in Tunisia stood up and said to those men who wanted to impose Sharia on the constitution, they said, no, you won't, and no, you don't, and no, you won't. And they said, we have these rights given to us by Bourguiba, President Bourguiba, and you're not going to take them away. And so they organized themselves together with men, what do you call them, labor unions, etc. They organized very well, and they succeeded. They made a very important success, which is they refused to let the constitution reflect that this is a country that has become a country where religion is imposed on the state. And that is the success, the most important success of Tunisia. And this, as I said, it is the fact that the civil society won, that the constitution is civil, that they are on the right track, though they are very careful to tell you we're not there. And I like the fact that their president, current president, Baji Qais Sibsi, is a man who ran for president at age 88 or 90 and went through 2 campaigns and won. And he won because exactly of what he represents. So that the Muslim Brotherhood and the other Islamists did not confiscate what the Tunisians did. I don't think this would have been able to happen in Tunisia had Egypt fallen to the Muslim Brotherhood in a big way. I think the fact that the Egyptian people stopped the project of the Muslim Brotherhood is an amazing accomplishment that we should never undermine. And had they not done that in Egypt, I don't think the Tunisians could have done that. Egypt said to the Egypt said to the Muslim Brotherhood, you will not impose religion on the state. We are religious people, we practice, but you are not going to be allowed to impose religion on state. And that is what happened. I don't care, some people want to call it coup d'etat, or I don't see it as a coup d'etat. I see it that the people called on the army to say, come and help us with this. And that's what happened, and thank God it happened. Because I think the Muslim Brotherhood project would have ruined the whole region had it not been stopped in Egypt and taken up. And I want to just deviate a little bit to say a little bit about Iran. I think Iran was the first country in the modern times right now, as a jumhuriya, as a republic, to bring about imposing religion on the state in 1979. And that is one of the big problems why we had extremism in the region as a reaction, because then they had to sort of become more conservative. They have to say, they had to become, so to speak, more Catholic than the Pope. But Egypt, I'm not very worried about. The only thing I would worry about is if Egypt is dragged in terms of ground wars in Libya and Yemen. And I don't think this is happening. We'll get to Yemen in a minute. I'm going to go quickly in each and every place so that I don't lose attention of this wonderful audience. Libya is a mess. Libya is a mess because because Libya became like the prototype where everybody could say, yes, bring down Gaddafi, of course, let's do, and let's take credit all together, and etc. And decide that this is a momentous development, and then, okay, pack up and go. I mean, they all knew there were no institutions in Libya to withhold being a non-dictatorship, if you will. There was no institutions. The man called it Jamahiriya. The man just called, he said, this is run the way I want. It is a Jamahiriya. It's what the people want, and I know what they want, and run it my way, and that's it. For those, all of them, from the French to the Americans to everybody else, they knew clearly that there were no institutions in Libya. How dare they leave it like this and run? And that is something they have to live with, because Libya is ruined. It's going to take a long time to rebuild Libya. I will speak, I guess I'm going to do Syria and then Yemen in this case. Look, no one is not guilty in Syria. Everyone is guilty. No one is innocent in what happened in Syria. The percentages changed tremendously. Yes, absolutely. President Bashar al-Assad and his regime are number one responsible. They are the most responsible, because you can't be governing and bring the country to where it is. There were demonstrations to begin with. They were calling for reform. And he decided to deal with it in a security manner, only security first. And I am one of those who believe had there not been procrastination by the international community, and particularly the United States, had there not been an amazing, horrifying investment by Russia into the regime in Syria in the way that they paralyzed the Security Council, had none of this happened, I don't think ISIS would have grown to where it is. There was a way to control it. They were a small number, and they should have just gotten rid of them right then. But everybody, as if they just wanted to say, good, gather them in Syria. Just like George W. Bush said, bring it on, come to Iraq. I'll fight you there so that I don't have to fight you in American cities. It seems Vladimir Putin had a similar idea to do it in Syria, and it seems that President Obama didn't mind much. So, consequently, Syria is an absolute pain in the heart for what's happening to the people there, how many refugees, how ruined is the country, and how long it's going to take. It's going to take longer. Wherever it is, it's going to take much longer in Syria because certain men feel that victory is their staying in power, and then right now, yes, of course, the defeat of ISIS is necessary and the priority, but it should not be that one stop only. Syria has got to be recovered, and there is no way that it's going back to business as usual. There's no way that, I don't know, maybe at best it would have to be partition federation, that's at best. Otherwise, no, it's not going to be business as usual before all of this happened. The example of possibility of a good federation was really the obvious thing that was happening in Yemen. They were really working, and they arrived at a model where they would move from the simple state to a federal state. And they really were going places with that. The reconciliation, the dialogue, etc. They were really going places. And then, of course, we know what happened with the Houthis, and we know what they decided to take over the government, and with the help of Ali Abdullah Saleh, another man, the former president of Yemen, who decided that no, he won't be edged out, he'll have to be back in. So he decided that it doesn't matter how, I'll be back right into the office, the presidency, whether it's through me or through my son. And so he allied himself with the Houthis. They did overthrew the government of Mansour Hadi, Abdurrabba Mansour Hadi. And then we know that they came close to the Saudi, to touch the Saudi national security, and that's when the Saudis did gather the coalition, the Arab coalition, and the operations. The big operation was announced to be seized and to be replaced by another one, which is about rebuilding, but they never said this is going to stop right now. They said we will pursue them if they move on the ground to the Houthis. So that possibly can be contained. We know that the US moved to say to the Iranians in the high seas to say, we're not going to let you give the Houthis arms, because this is going to be really now, we have to stand up with our ally, Saudi Arabia, because this is about the national security of Saudi Arabia. And so that was a statement that was important to be made by the US, in particular at the time that the US is negotiating with Iran about that big nuclear deal, which will relieve Iran from sanctions, which will only postpone Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapon, and then which has not confronted Iran on its ambitions regionally. And had there been a confrontation to say to Iran, by the administration, we can't give it all to you, I think that would be a different reaction. I think the Arabs are not as interested in only the American and the Western and the 5 countries' obsession that nuclear. No, they care about regional, because Iran has practically pocketed Iraq. They have great influence in Iraq. They will not give up Syria. They invested themselves way too much. They have control in Lebanon through Hezbollah. Yemen, they're backing down, but who knows for how long? And unless the Americans are really, serious and say we can't, and we will not give it all, because giving the nuclear together with the money, a lot of money, billions, in order to go ahead and really go ahead and accelerate your nuclear work, though it's going to be in 10 years, not in one, and then also use it so that what's Haras al-Thawri, somebody help me, what are they called? Revolutionary Guards go and wreak havoc in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq, by growing militias there, because the jury is still out on Iraq. So we are in really serious transition. It's not in a great place. Lebanon is not in a, no, of course not. Economically, there is a lot of hurt, and the people are hurting economically. To live in the belly of instability is really not an easy thing to do. To be, without a president, with veto power to this one and that one, I'm sorry to say, but the fact that we are a number of minorities, then the mentality shrinks. Instead of confronting all our leaders, wherever we are, whatever our background is, instead of confronting our leaders and correcting them when they go wrong, we shrink, because we have then that mentality of the minority that says, no, they know better, they could fix it, because I want them to protect me, as a tribe. So we transformed ourselves into a tribal place rather than really exercising a democracy. And we tried once. We were the first that went on the streets and made a difference in 2005, was it, right? And my God, a difference was made. But then we thought that that's it, we just rally, and the people thought that they could go out and do that, and then when somebody starts to shoot, you go home. Doesn't happen. You gotta survive despite the shooting, despite the cost. But it didn't happen. Anyway, where Lebanon is right now is at least not as bad as Syria, and not as bad as Yemen, not as bad as Libya, not as good as, maybe just the same place where both Tunisia and Egypt, maybe, except that Tunisian women have really made a difference politically, as being recognized as a force to be reckoned with. And we in Lebanon, we still think women are second class when it comes to politics. That's sad. Thank you very much. Please permit me to tell you about Beirut Institute for just 2 minutes. I founded Beirut Institute some 4 years ago, and it's been a very difficult struggle, because the mentality of having a think tank in the Arab region it just somehow does not comprehend. I mean, intellectually they try to say, yeah, I understand, think tank, of course, Davos, Council on Foreign Relations, yes, of course. Okay, but then when you tell them that it takes investing into a think tank, intellectually and financially, in order for it to be independent, they don't get it. I mean, some men would just say, sure, I will build at a university, and I will put my name, this is the building of so-and-so. You would just say, what a fantastic person, is generous, but come to say, be part of building this think tank, they just don't want to, or they're afraid, because they're afraid it's political. And so I decided that I would try to do something different. So Beirut Institute is an independent think tank. And by the way, I failed at getting the private sector to be supportive of it, total failure because of that mentality. And now it's going to be a combination. Everything will be open and shafaf, transparency. So anyway, we are founded in Beirut. We are registered in Beirut. I'm very happy to call it Beirut Institute. I think Beirut deserves to have a place on the roadmap of think tanks worldwide. go to beirutinstitute.org. You will find a lot of things that we have been doing, and with the little budget that we have. But I'm very proud to tell you that the logo and the branding was done by Eli Khouri, for example, from Quantum, pro bono. Booz and Company gave us the strategic roadmap pro bono. They gave us our website pro bono. Our lawyer gives us the services pro bono. We had free offices. We don't have them anymore because he rented the place for about a year and a half or 2 years or more, actually, free of rent free and premises pro bono. So that is really an example of a collective putting hands together and really insisting on building it. You will see who we have on the board of directors and the advisory board. It's all on the website. Then you will see that we have had programs with the United Nations. We host a series of lunches with ambassadors of the United Nations. First time we did this, we had 5 women from the different parts of the Arab region to be part of the process, so that those men will know and women would know what's going on of the minds of women as part of the transition. Then you have the last time we got 2 people from Lebanon and Jordan to speak about the impact of the Syrian refugees on the infrastructure of Lebanon and Syria. So we have a lot of projects. We tried to do the inaugural at that time, we called it, in Beirut. And the first time I had to change the date. The second time, having had done everything for that inaugural and worked so hard, I had to cancel it the last minute because of the security situation. So that really was heartbreaking. So now, then this is what I said, we changed from complete independence. I said, no, we don't want any government help. But then I realized all the think tanks take some sort of, governmental, not endorsement, but the hosting facilities. They'll just say, welcome, and we host, but doesn't mean that they pay the bills, okay? They pay part of the expenses, but they don't pay the bills. So then we decided that we have to go knocking doors and see where can we go temporarily to start to go from one Arab place to another to have the conference we want to have. And we were welcomed by Abu Dhabi. So the Beirut Institute first summit will be held in Abu Dhabi. And that is going to be really a magnificent event, because we're going to bring in, I'm telling you, it's been a one-woman show for 5 years. I mean, I'm a volunteer still. For 5 years, I'm still volunteering. My daughter, who is now 25, started to volunteer with me in the beginning of building it, and we almost lost our great relationship because I was like just saying, we've got to build it. And so I think we're going to have an amazing program. And we just started some invitations for some, people who we are keen on having, in order to have a smart conversation, an honest conversation about reconfiguring the Arab region and its global space. Beyond political threats, beyond political economy and security threats, we need to just reconfigure that region, and we need to be part of it. So we need to think about it. We have an online conversation that we ask people to come in with their ideas. Come in with your ideas. Tell us, what do you think we should be thinking about? How should we be thinking about it? How can we be positive and constructive instead of whining and complaining and pointing fingers? How can you do that? Everyone in their own fields. Somebody, and one of the contributors is someone who has the restaurants in Lebanon, the amazing idea of Tawli and what's the other one? And that is the man who has gone to the farmers, and he said, you know what, you are farmers and nobody is recognizing the value of you being farmers. I am going to do this. He encouraged them that you have the rights, you just go ahead and I'll bring you the good product, and go ahead and we come to buy it. And then he brings people from the farm, from the town itself, to the restaurant Tawli. Then they come and they cook in that restaurant. And so the woman who has been, very proud of her cooking, and the man who has been very proud of his farm, they're bringing their produce. And so this is one of the contributions to this conversation online. It doesn't have to be all political. It doesn't have to be all political. An artist can do this. Let us just really think that we can all do something about it. So am I crazy to, instead of like relaxing a little bit, and God knows how much I juggle, with a demanding job like being an international reporter basically, and a columnist, and hopping all over the world, and then taken on building an institute, I at times think, at times I believe I am. Honestly, I would just say, what is wrong with you? Why? And I dare to, thank you. And so I dare to differ, and I dare to make a difference. Thank you for listening to me.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Tame. I'm a student at Columbia, and thank you so much. You've always been an inspiration to me for the years that I've known you at the UN. And just as inspiring to hear you speak today and tell your story. So from one woman professional to another, I would like to ask what your greatest challenge was. I know you said you had many, but if you could just share one of those with us, and advice that you would give to other young women who face challenges as well. And then on the last note that you described how the women in Tunisia have come to make themselves a force to be reckoned with, I wonder what you believe is the best way, or are there certain conditions that need to happen, let's say in Lebanon, for that to be the case?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you, and that you take the time and be here. I appreciate your presence, because you are the next generation, and my daughter is in your league, and for me, it's when you take time out and come to listen to me, I'm grateful. Thank you. Look, I think the one advice I'll give, it's what I say to my daughter. Do your homework, know what you're talking about, and have confidence in yourself and persistence. Just don't give up at the first thing. Persist. This doesn't work, find a solution. If that solution you can't find right away, seek advice. And don't be afraid to ask advice. I mean, what's wrong with asking for an advice? Honestly, and I mean that professionally, not only from your mother and your father and the ones that you work with, you live with, but also professionally. It's nice to have mentors. I think women, I want to repeat, particularly for women, young women, in my case, in my generation, I was raised to be afraid what the neighbors would say. What's your uncle going to say to do about it? What's your father going to think? And it was always judged through the eyes of the environment, of others. And I made a deal with my mother, I remember, because I said to her, listen, you have one option if you want me. You either believe them or you believe me. So what about if you are my confidant? And I will come to you with everything. I will tell you everything in my life, because I'm going to need you to give me that protection of knowing that you know what I'm doing. And you don't trust anything you hear. Anything, anybody, because in Lebanon at that time, she had her skirt was too short, or she walked around, the boy was around her, this silly stuff that's supposed to run your life. But so I took my mother as my confidant. And that was to me the most amazing thing. And that's the relationship I have right now with my daughter. Not only she's my best friend, I'm so thrilled that I am her best friend too. But it doesn't have to be the family only. I mean, for me, this is the most precious thing in my life at this point, this relationship with my daughter. But you could have it with others. Don't be afraid. Really, don't be afraid. Fear not and dare. That is the one thing I want to tell you. As to the women, look, I once wrote something and the women objected, but I'm going to say it one more time. I honestly think there is no opportunity for women to make political change in Lebanon unless they seriously form a women political party. There is no way I am going to be allowed to run for this office or that office if the leader of where I belong religiously, and because I'm not going to say where I am because I'm not, the leader of my tribe would veto it. There's no way I can be a member of the parliament. There's no way I could be a minister. There's no way. There's no way. So if women really care to make a difference, they've got to form a party. And that's not going to happen. Oh, we form a party and in 6 months, oh, yes, we demand. No, but you need to organize. Parties take a long time to build. And parties take a long time to be taken seriously. And women must be very serious about it. Doesn't mean that there are no men in such a party, but it has to be about quota, putting women in. And I then face those women who say to me, oh, you're demeaning women by accepting quota. Really? How is that? How am I going to catch up as a woman with this discrepancy if you don't give me the push through the 30% so that I could have that as a base, and then, you know, it's a temporary thing. I need that push, otherwise I could scream in the bathroom and on the balcony, and I'm not going to get anywhere. So I think it's a very serious challenge. We have good women. The women who served in the parliament, nothing is wrong with them, although they happen to be the wife of people who died or people who were targeted, unfortunately. But they did a great job. They all did. And we have women in different sectors who are exceptional. So it's about time to just think out of the box.
Hello. Hi, I'm Fadi Sharhoub. I'm one of the cardiology fellows here working in New York. So today is Yom Ha'atzmaut, which is the 67th year of the Israeli independence. Oh. And a Jewish Arab journalist by the name of Lucy Aharish was honored, quote unquote, by carrying the torch on this special day for them. So if you had any comments, please.
Sorry, I don't get the question. What am I commenting on?
It's just that they had a Jewish Arab carry a torch on this Independence Day today, and as an honor, if you want to quote unquote. So if you could comment about that, please.
In order for me to comment on this, I really would have to know the circumstances and if he had a message behind that. Because he may have a message to say, yeah, I am part of this society, and I'm going to tell you, you're not going to kick me out. Because I'll tell you something. The demographic problem in Israel, from my point of view, cannot be resolved except by the two-state solution. And they don't want that. It doesn't seem that this is happening. Or the one-state solution, which is one man, one vote, a democracy. The Israelis don't want that, or at least the majority of them. So then the only thing is to actually to push the Palestinians out of Israel. Out of Israel, not only out of the West Bank, in order for the demographic problem to be resolved. So if this man was doing this to say, no, I am part of the fabric of this society, then yes, I agree with him. So it depends on where he stands and what is the message. Okay, that's good then. Bravo for him in that case. Because otherwise the other option is to say, no, I will accept you to dismiss me as part of the fabric of the society. And that would be a disaster. If the Palestinians are kicked out of Israel, the disaster, or it's already a horrible disaster. So I don't know how else it's going to be. Please.
Hi, I'm Jafar Haider. I have a question for you about the change in the region, in the Middle East. First of all, thank you for sharing with us your experiences. My question is actually about what you think is the way, or maybe the way you read history in the past, or your experiences about why all the time when there's change in our region, it collapses on the doors and the walls of the royalties in our area. And actually, what do you think is a way, or maybe we learn from history lessons to really induce change in those areas? Because I think any revolution in the Middle East is going to collapse if the royalties, where they govern all the resources, are not changing.
Look, let me tell you something. Some people are going to say to you right away, you know what? I'd rather stay in this royalties, as you call them, under the royal. I would rather be a Qatari and an Emirati and a Saudi and a Kuwaiti and Omani than to be a Syrian these days who's drowning in the sea. No, but wait. I'm going to tell you both, because I'm both a geopolitical analyst and a woman. I can do both simultaneously. So then, they have been guarded. Their system is different from ours because they have their own loyalty system, if you will, The Saudis, they would want reform, but they don't want to overthrow their king. I mean, they are different from the Jumhuriyat, from the republics. One. Two, they're more comfortable. They've got money, they've got oil. Three, they have this tradition of, you know, I mean, it's really fantastic. I don't know if I like it very much, but I don't like obedience normally. I really dislike obedience. But I then look at them and see that how obedient they are, son to father, brother to older brother, sister to, you know, I mean, it's a little bit interesting. I don't like obedience, but it's interesting. Certainly, they have a long way to go when it comes to women. Absolutely. But you know what? I want to tell you something. بمجلس الشورى Saudi Arabia, there are 35 women. Take a look at us in Lebanon. See how many women we have in our parliament. Okay? That's one. No, but when it comes to liberty, for me, I uphold liberty as number one priority. The liberty with responsibility. As a journalist, I believe in my right and my responsibilities as well. So therefore, I think it's going to be a long time. But when I go to Dubai, I don't feel it's that bad. They're not in a hurry. I mean, they really, in Dubai, they wake up and they say, I love my ruler. They say that to me. I wake up and I dream something and then, you know what? I know it can happen. I'm happy. They have happiness. And I tell you the example of Dubai, give most of the Arab world, give them a Dubai option versus a Tehran option. I'm sorry, they're gonna go for Dubai. No, I'm not saying it's an ultimate. I'm not telling you this is an ultimate. And I mean, you're here in the United States and there is no ultimate. I mean, you know, let's call it as it is. In Dubai, this is bravo for what they've done in their own country. This was a desert some 30, 40 years ago. Bravo for them for what they've done. Is it a place where I choose to live? No, I choose to live in New York. I have a home in New York and I have a home in my beautiful Beirut, and somebody knows it.
Okay, thank you, Marhaba. Tariq Dabous. Just a quick question about Egypt, please. Egypt, I know you said it's good. I think maybe you meant it from a geopolitical perspective. But if you look internally, would you agree that Egypt has taken one step forward and now 2 steps back?
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, when I write in my column, I write it, I don't only say it. I write it that, you know, exclusion in the way that it's being done is fanatic in a way, and it's very harmful, it's very scary. I understand that they have to be firm in certain ways. I understand that they have a project to, from their point of view, that the Muslim Brotherhood are not going to come back and take over. But the Muslim Brotherhood are part of the fabric of the society. They cannot be excluded. You can't eliminate them. They are. What you can do is that you can develop the country into becoming a country that can accept to have an active opposition. But that's going to take a while, and there's going to be guarantees of some security issues. But no, I am not comfortable with the way they are dealing with, especially the people who did the revolution before. It was confiscated first by the Muslim Brothers, and then now with what the Sisi government is doing. But I want to say that Egypt is important on the geopolitical level in the following sense for me, from my point of view. I believe that there has to be an Arab presence in the balance or in the regional balance of powers. I don't want the regional balance of power to be only Israel, Turkey, and Iran with fragmented Arab. Therefore, for me as an Arab, I definitely would support the strategic relationship between Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates. Because at Kuwait, the 3 countries from the Gulf are investing heavily in Egypt and really pushing Egypt to stand on its feet economically. And I'm sure many of you saw what's happening now. They're building a new city, new Asima, new capital. And I think that is the only probably really smart policy that was taken, really smart long-term policy taken by Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. Really smart. One of the very few, if not the only. because we need to invest in Egypt. Egypt is a very important country for Egypt itself and for the balance, the presence of for the Arab presence in the regional balance of powers. So I'm all for Egypt. And things will change if Egypt is okay. Sorry?
Okay, my name is Noman Barakat, and I'm originally from India, but I love the Middle East. I went to the AUB. And what breaks my heart is, why is there such little support within the Arab governments for the Palestinian cause?
You know,
I mean, I see the massacre.
I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. Really, I'll be honest with you. First of all, I want to say, not necessarily in this order, I'm just going to say it as it comes to me, that Palestinian divisions have really hurt Palestinians. I wish that the Palestinians got their act together and didn't say Hamas here, Fatah here, you know, priority is that they fight with each other. It's really harmed the Palestinian cause tremendously, tremendously. Could it, you know, then it fed into this leader supporting this faction. Okay, Hamas was supported by, say, Gaddafi and Bashar al-Assad, Fatah by Saudis. You know, and it led to further disintegration of that one particular position that should have been taken in support of the rightful right of the Palestinians to their own state, ending occupation. It is dehumanizing to live under occupation. It's a violation of human rights, and you know that as much as I do. What happened is also there was preoccupation with, you know, people got preoccupied by their own lives. I don't know whether somebody has sat at the table and decided, you know what, I'm going to create havoc in the different parts of the Arab region to change their minds about being focused on the Palestinian issue. Which could have happened because a lot of attention swayed away from the Palestinian issue. Really. You would walk on the streets now in any Arab capital, it is not the number one issue. No longer. It's sad. It's sad. It's very sad. And the sadder part is this, that I'm sad about where the Israelis are. Because this is a democracy, as they say. They can make a difference with their own government. And I'm very sad that they have not made themselves clear and stood up clearly to say, I want a Palestinian state next to me because the two-state solution is in my interest. They didn't do that. In the elections, they practically were silent when it came to the issue of two-state solution. So I'm afraid they are also, you know, part of this whatever milieu it is, that they are part of it. So we don't have an Israeli public that is conscientious. We don't have a Palestinian public that is united. We have an international community. Right now, I tell you some news. The United States right now is trying to persuade France and even New Zealand. And next week, there will be a meeting between John Kerry and the foreign ministers of Egypt and Jordan, and what the administration wants to say to them, don't put into that resolution, you know, the parameters thing you're talking about in the Security Council resolution. Well, leave it for now, because, you know, we are really trying to make this deal with Iran. We don't want to have things. Okay, come on. I mean, President Obama came first to say, I have something to do, which is to resolve the Palestinian-Israeli issue. He was silenced, and he accepted to be silenced. And suddenly, he's not being silenced on Iran. But he wants to be, he was readily silenced on the Palestinian. And now he's saying, quiet, don't bother me as I make my deal with Iran. Despite the fact that they are, I mean, you know, they are under a lot of duress, the Palestinians. And I'm with them when they went to the ICC, to the International Criminal Court. I'm with that decision. But exercise it. Exercise that ability. Put occupation on trial. Be consistent. They don't have a plan, and it's a misery, and it's unfortunate, really, and sad.
Yemen. What do you think is going to happen in the next few months? And whatever happens, what are the consequences on Saudi Arabia? Thank
I
you.
think Saudi Arabia had to do the Yemen operation. Had to. They should have prepared it a little better. They shouldn't have rushed to say, for example, Pakistan is in it, when I don't think Pakistan should have been in it anyway. It would have made more sense to say it's an Arab force, not Sunni. I didn't like the insinuation that it was Sunnite. And then to be slapped by the Pakistani parliament, was it, that said, no, we're not going to be part of this. So that was a handicap for them. But again, I think, in my column tomorrow in Al-Haya, which gets translated and is published in the Huffington Post, I tackled the issue of Yemen in depth. I would very much like if you would do me the honor of reading it. But I say there's basically, I think also that it was realized that there was no readiness from all the members of the coalition, Arab coalition, to give ground troops to go into Yemen to fight, fight on the ground war. Because Egypt was not willing, because Egypt has been there, done that, and they got defeated. And so Egypt was not going to do this again. The Gulf countries don't have the readiness or ability or have you to send ground troops. They did well with the naval movements, and together, especially with the United States, with that message. And they had to stop the high intensity bombings, because there was a lot of. I mean, it served its purpose on one hand, because they got rid of all these ballistic missiles and stuff like this that were threatening their own security. But no, I mean, if they don't secure Yemen and Sana'a one way or another, that's going to go on for a long, long time. So that will be low intensity war. That they will still bomb, but they will not going to bomb this way. Right now the Omanis were trying to have some sort of a deal taking place unless Ali Abdullah Saleh agrees to get out of the way. But for the deal to really, disseminate and withdraw all his army and reestablish some sort of a resemblance of going back to the government, the state, to respect the state, and then let them they'll have elections, dialogue and elections. But unless that happens, and unless Iran also sort of doesn't say to the Houthis, you know what, deliver on this one, we're still going to have a problem for a long time ago to go. Look, Iran has given arms before. The Houthis right now don't need arms because they have taken the arms of the army. They have the arms, just like Daesh. What did Daesh do in Mosul? They don't need money. They don't need, that they run out at one point, surely. They'll run out of money, they'll run out of arms, they'll run out of all of that. It takes time, but for now they don't need it. So I anticipate, I think it was necessary for Saudi Arabia to do what it did. I think they didn't prepare enough. I mean, it seems that they just rallied very quickly, all these people, without understanding, without putting a real long-term plan for your exit strategy and for your staying strategy. And so their exit strategy came all of a sudden, but yet they're still there. But I think it was a necessary thing to do, because I tell you, if you read the public reaction was very supportive, because they said it's about time that one Arab country, all the Arab countries would just say to Iran, stop. You can't go on taking over our countries and controlling our Arab lands. We want to be a great, wonderful, respectable power in the region. Surely, Iran is a powerful, strong, important neighbor. But doesn't mean when you give them the okay and you sign to say, yeah, take over. You know what? Now you've taken over Iraq. You want Syria? Okay, Syria next. No problem. Lebanon will give it as part of the deal. And yeah, well, it's okay. Yemen too. And they were talking about, some of the advisors to Rouhani, President Rouhani, was talking about the revival of the empire, the Persian Empire, and with big with headquarters in Baghdad. So yes, it's a big thing.
I don't know if you mentioned Daesh. You didn't speak about ISIS, and
it's the same, Daesh, ISIS.
I know,
Hey.
but I want to label it ISIS.
Oh, okay.
And just the role of ISIS and how it came to mess up the equation in this region, and what is the future?
Sure.
And why was it created?
Yeah, why was it created?
We know, but I mean, I want to
No, I mean, honestly, look, I mean, I don't think personally anyone who, I mean, okay, the best way I could come to tell you what I think, Daesh, ISIS, whatever, let me say Daesh, because this is what it might be the best, the closest way I can describe it is that it's an amazing cocktail of intelligence worldwide. But I also think we need to distinguish between Daesh of Syria, for example, and Daesh of Iraq, how, at least at the beginning, how it started. I mean, when Daesh became so important all of a sudden, and you know, it was in the beginning, we would hear of some Daesh here and there, but when it became the big thing is when they took over Mosul. I don't think this was them alone. I think that was a Sunni uprising, really, against the excessive regime of Nur al-Maliki. And I think the remnants of Saddam Hussein were also reorganized, and then Daesh, you know, sort of was in the forefront of all that. Don't forget that many elements of Daesh were in the prisons of Bashar al-Assad, and that he let them go. First, they were in the prisons of Nur al-Maliki, and then Bashar al-Assad as well. They all let them go to be part of to jeopardize, actually, and to torpedo the opposition in Syria, fragmented as it is. But I mean, there was an armed opposition that was not excessive, no, not extremist, that it was a moderate opposition. And then all of a sudden you had, then we don't talk about them. We only talk about the extremist opposition. We only talk about the Daesh and the Jabhat al-Nusra. Yes, Jabhat al-Nusra is different. I think there were Arab countries who, particularly, I mean, I cannot prove it, but it is said, I should be careful how I say that, because it's understood, it's said that Jabhat al-Nusra is supported very much by Gulf states, or by, not Gulf states, by individuals, by families in Kuwait, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf states. And I think this is, they try to control that. I understand that in as far as the financing, curbing the financing right now they're doing very well in Saudi Arabia, that there are good signs with Qatar, and that, the situation in Kuwait is a little more difficult, not because the Kuwaiti government does not want to do this, it's because of that the government is really not functional enough, it's divided in effect, to take the firm decisions that need to be taken. Listen, I mean, in the final analysis, I think ISIS, Daesh, however you want to call it, I think it's a phenomenon that will not be there in a few years, but it is a harmful phenomenon. It's going to be like a tornado that comes and does what it's doing, and it's horrifying, but I don't think they will last. There is no way they could last. There is no way that they're going to be, they're going to survive in the midst of that part of the world. So, what they do is they produce ugliness in the production. They do television production for murdering and for they want to be the talk of the town. They won't. I mean, by the way, for your answer and answering your question, I think they have done the Palestinians the biggest they have the biggest harm, misfavor, because and the Sunni themselves, of course, because they just changed the subject to be about them. 9/11 cost Arab Sunnis, not in Islam altogether. 9/11 was the first most important big nail in the coffin of the Arab Sunnis, because this country, just said, look, you've done this to us. And then comes Daesh with their bragging about their atrocities and unbearable atrocities, and they are the now face of the Sunnis. So I think this is, the harm they're causing to Islam altogether, of course, but to the Sunnis in particular, and not to mention, of course, the harm, the actual harm, the physical harm, they're causing the minorities in the most despicable manner.
Sorry, last question. I was just wondering where you place human rights within your discourse. I'm just basing this question off of what you said about Egypt, for example. I felt it was a little bit simplistic, just saying it's the Muslim Brotherhood versus Sisi or Mubarak. I was just wondering where you see the civil society that is being cracked down on. I believe that there are reports saying that the situation under Sisi is worse than under Mubarak. So I was just wondering, also you've expressed various things with regards to Saudi Arabia, Qatar. I believe they have a terrible human rights record. So I'm just wondering, do you feel that in the region we need to accept certain autocratic regimes to have stability?
No, but I also don't want to witness in this region the project of the Muslim Brotherhood under the name of democracy, and they confiscate democracy and impose more restrictions on human rights and women's rights. For me, imposing religion on state takes away from my rights as a woman, and that puts my human rights in jeopardy. So that is number one for me, that I don't want anybody to dictate to me a way of life. Be it Hezbollah in Lebanon, be it Ikhwan Muslimin, Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, be it Iran, be it anybody, I don't care. I don't choose to live in Saudi Arabia, no matter what, because there is restrictions on my human rights. It's not my choice. I don't want to be there. But I want to remind you of what I said to the gentleman in answering the question. You asked about Egypt, right? And I did say very clearly that, I don't know if you understood me when I said al-iqsa', what did I say in English? Exclusion, al-iqsa'. This is when I criticized it and I said it's excessive. I didn't say this is a violation of human rights. As far as the trial of the Muslim Brotherhood, I am not going to take up the position of the American media that automatically a trial of what the Muslim Brotherhood leadership did is a defiance of human rights. I'm not going to buy that. I am opposed to the project of the Muslim Brotherhood, and I declare that and I write it. If you're going to consider that a violation of human rights, I would differ with you. It's a political position they have taken. There is a long history to discuss how they do that, how they did that. And I definitely do not call what happened in Egypt a coup d'etat. I am very critical, and I said that I do it in writing. In writing. I am very critical of the excessive measures taken by the Sisi regime, not only against the Muslim Brotherhood, but also, I said and I repeat, against the young people who did the revolution before it was confiscated by the Muslim Brotherhood and then by Sisi. So I think I did enough for that. Yeah?
Great. Okay. I have a second question. We spoke about female parliamentarians in the Lebanese government. And you mentioned that some countries have many more women, and we have a few, and of course I agree with that. But you did mention that they were doing good work, the female parliamentarians.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you could give us examples.
Yes, I tell you. I think Naila Mawad is a very good example. I think Naila Mawad is a very good example because she's hands-on in her environment. She is making projects for the people in her region. She is somebody who's always fighting for women's rights and inspiring women. I think she is a remarkable woman, and she is a very good example for me. Naila Mawad is a very good example of a woman who is doing an amazing job as a parliament member. There are others. I'm not saying she's the only one, but I just wanted to give one example. And I think we shouldn't. I know we say that she's a former first lady whose husband was assassinated. Surely she would have probably done just the same had the system been that she was elected without that as a background. I mean, the fabric of the woman is the same, her smarts and her dedication. So yeah, it's unfortunate for her before it is unfortunate for us that she lost her husband, and that's how she became a member of the parliament. But I really believe that women, I know there's a lot of people who want to say, oh, Lebanese women are shallow, they care only about their plastic surgery and all that. There's some of that. Yeah, of course there's some of that. I mean, again, nothing is wrong with wanting to be beautiful. Nothing is wrong with dressing well. And something is very wrong with making the wrong decisions when you start to just do this and that and you become really horrible. I mean, you know, really, especially the young girls. It really breaks my heart when I see the young Lebanese women. It breaks my heart. I mean, why? I mean, you're beautiful. Just like stay. Like my daughter says to me, grow with your age, mama. You know, the grace, be graceful about how you grow with your age. I really wish that they would do that. But however, you will find some fantastic lawyers, some fantastic engineers, some fantastic journalists, some fantastic teachers. And yes, we have them. Let's celebrate them. Look at the designers we have. You know, women who are... I'll give you two examples of two friends of mine. Nada Dips, for example. Nada Dips is someone who is just making beautiful furniture. But Milia M is doing some beautiful clothes. These are international women. Nadine Labaki, what is she doing? She is magnificent. You know what Nadine Labaki is doing? I was just spending time with her in Beirut. You know, this great, great director. She spends her days researching. I hope I could say that. The lives of the adolescents in prisons who nobody wants them. I mean, kids who are in prisons because they are 10 and 11 and 13 and 14, and there is no one who's protecting them. She does that sort of thing. They touch on the society. They understand what's going on. We have good journalists. Yeah, let's have faith. We have problems, but, you know, we survived the country without government. Good for us. Thank you.